Are you dreaming of visiting Switzerland? Planning a trip to Switzerland is very exciting, but it can also be overwhelming. How do you choose which of the many scenic cities, towns, and villages to visit? Which mountaintop excursions should you take? And what's the best way to get around Switzerland? And of course, how much of the country can you realistically see within your time frame? If you've asked yourself any of these questions, this is the podcast for you. This is the Holidays to Switzerland travel podcast, and in each episode, your host Carolyn Schonnefinger chats with Swiss travel experts to answer your most commonly asked questions, provide practical tips, and take you on a virtual visit to the most popular destinations, and of course some hidden gems to help you plan your dream trip to Switzerland. And you'll hear plenty of conversations about Swiss cheese and chocolate too. Are you ready to plan your trip to Switzerland? Well, let's get started.
Hello, thanks for joining me today on episode 56. If you're a regular listener or you're new here, I'm so glad to be chatting to you today. If you're like me, when it comes to planning your trip to Switzerland, narrowing down which places to visit can be really difficult. But one region that features on most people's itineraries is the Jungfrau Region, and rightly so. The Jungfrau Region is one of Switzerland's most popular destinations, not only because of its extraordinary beauty, but because it offers so much for the visitor to see and do. It's also home to two of Switzerland's most famous mountains, Jungfrau and Schilthorn. But if you'll only have limited time in the area, you might be wondering which of these mountains to visit. Should you visit Jungfraujoch, or would Schilthorn be a better choice? Well, there's no simple answer. Both are quite different excursions and can be vastly different in price, depending on the type of ticket you buy. So if you're debating which of these mountains to visit and you need some assistance to help you choose, keep listening. In this episode, I'll cover all the ins and outs of each mountain excursion, including how to get there, what you can see and do at the summit and the intermediate stations, how much time to allow for your excursion, what time of year the excursion operates, ticket prices, and more. Before we get started, I'd like to say thank you, as always, to the lovely folks at Switzerland Tourism for sponsoring the podcast. Make sure you visit their website, myswitzerland.com, for loads of inspiration and ideas to help with your Switzerland trip planning. When it's time to head off on your vacation, don't forget to pack your camera, because if you need the perfect shot, you need Switzerland. Okay, so I'm going to let you into a little secret here. And if you've listened to previous episodes, you'll probably already know that I'm not a big fan of cable cars. And because of this, I've actually done the Jungfraujoch excursion a number of times, but it was only until fairly recently that I actually visited the Schilthorn. We'd stayed in the Jungfrau region a number of times, and my husband and my sons, they would head off and go up to visit the Schilthorn, but not me. No, there was no way I was getting on that cable car. So I stayed in Mürren and looked around and had a lovely time while they went up to the Schilthorn. But one day I decided I just need to get over this. Even though I don't like heights, I'm not on a cable car for very long, and if I keep putting it off, I'm just going to miss out. So I did start slowly, going on the occasional cable car. And then this year when we visited Switzerland in July, I just decided to, I'm going to suck it up and I'm going to get on board and do as many cable car rides as I can. So this time I actually did my second visit to the Schilthorn and went on numerous other cable car rides as well. So the Jungfraujoch had won out in the past because I could get there all the way by train, whereas the poor Schilthorn had avoided my presence thanks to it being reached by cable car, but not anymore. So I'm going to run through and just give you all the information about both these excursions so you can decide which one is the best one for you. So for no particular reason, we'll start with the Jungfraujoch. Now, the mountain on which this excursion takes place is Mount Jungfrau, which together with the Eiger and Monk form an impressive triple peak of mountains in the Bernese Alps. The Joch part of the name Jungfraujoch refers to a pass or a saddle between two mountains, And this is what is known as the top of Europe. Jungfraujoch is not the highest peak in Switzerland. It has a height of 3,454 metres above sea level. So there are certainly many higher peaks in Switzerland, but Jungfraujoch is home to Europe's highest railway station. And up here you get amazing views of the UNESCO World Heritage Swiss Alps Jungfrau Aletsch landscape. You really do feel like you are at the top of Europe. There are two ways you can reach Jungfraujoch. So the first and the traditional method is the one that I mentioned before, where you can travel all the way by train. So to get there, this involves a series of regional trains starting in Interlaken, or you can join at intermediate stations. And then you finally take, for the final leg of the trip, a cogwheel railway called the Jungfraubahn. Now, if you are starting your trip in Interlaken, you'll travel by train via Lauterbrunnen, Wengen and Kleine Scheidegg, or you can go via Grindelwald and Kleine Scheidegg. And you'll need to change trains at either Lauterbrunnen or Grindelwald, depending on which way you travel. Then, when you get to Kleine Scheidegg, you change again to the Jungfraubahn. This is the cogwheel train that takes you on the final leg of the journey, and this part of the trip takes 44 minutes. Part of this section of the trip goes through a tunnel that was carved through the mountain over 100 years ago. So the fact that they did that without all the modern day equipment is astounding in itself. Just before you reach the summit at top of Europe, the train makes a 5-minute stop at IJsmeer Station, which translates as the Sea of Ice. And here you can hop out of the train and stand on the platform and look out at some specially placed windows. And if it's a clear day, you'll just get the most magnificent views of the Eiger and Monk. Travelling from Interlaken by train all the way to Jungfraujoch takes just over 2 hours, and if you go via Lauterbrunnen, and slightly less if you're going via Grindelwald. Trains from Interlaken to Jungfraujoch operate twice per hour, so there's very frequent services. The second and the newer way to get to Jungfraujoch is to travel part of the way on the Eiger Express cableway, which only opened in December 2020. This state-of-the-art cableway travels between Grindelwald Terminal and Eiger Glacier Station, where you then connect to the Jungfrau train for the final leg of the journey. And if you travel this way, you actually get to the top of Europe 47 minutes faster than if you travel the entire way by train. The Eiger Express cable car was one of the cable car rides that I did this year, and it really is incredible. The cabins themselves are quite large. They hold 26 passengers, and they're just glass all round, so you get 360-degree views, and they really are amazing. They were so smooth and so quiet, and yeah, although I still have to admit I was still a little afraid when I looked down and saw how far above the ground I was. I didn't ever feel unsafe. They were just amazing. And these cable cars operate continuously throughout the day. If you do want to travel using the Eiger Express cable car, of course you can get to Grindelwald by train, and trains depart every 30 minutes. And just a note here about Grindelwald Terminal. This is a purpose-built terminal for the Eiger Express cableway and the Grindelwald Mannlichen cableway. And it also has a train station. So the Grindelwald Terminal station is different to the main Grindelwald train station, but it's on the same line. If you're travelling by train from Interlaken and you wish to take the Eiger Express cable car, make sure you disembark the train at Grindelwald Terminal, which is 4 minutes before the main Grindelwald station. I know that probably sounds a bit confusing, so I'll put a little guide into the show notes so you can quickly refer back to that if I've confused you there. But regardless, both ways of reaching the Jungfraujoch are really scenic, and you can, of course, opt to travel one way by train and the other by the train and cable car combination if you want to. Once you reach the Jungfraujoch top of Europe, there are numerous things you can see and do. One of the highlights is the opportunity to view the incredible Aletsch Glacier. This is the highest glacier in Europe, and it stretches for 23 kilometres from the Jungfrau to a plateau above the Rhone Valley. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and at its widest point is 2 kilometres wide. And it's, one of the most breathtaking views that you'll probably ever see. The best place to see the Aletsch Glacier at Jungfraujoch is from the Sphinx Observatory, which is actually an international research station. So scientists work there and record data about the glacier. But visitors can also go to the observatory, and there's an elevator which takes you up to a special viewing platform where you get panoramic views of the Aletsch Glacier and the surrounding Alps. There's plenty of other things that you can do at Jungfraujoch, top of Europe as well. One of the popular places to visit is the Ice Palace, which features a display of ice carvings. There's the Alpine Sensation, which is a 250-metre long tunnel showcasing the history of the Jungfrau Railway and the development of tourism in the Alps. So that's really interesting. And there are also numerous shops, including a Lindt chocolate shop, which is not to be missed. From mid-May until mid-October, you can enjoy activities out in the snow park. You can join in activities like snow tubing, sledging and skiing, but there is an additional cost for these activities, so do keep that in mind. There are 3 restaurants at Jungfraujoch, 2 of which are open all year round, and there's a bar and a coffee bar as well. Now, when you're travelling to or from Jungfraujoch, you can stop off and spend time at any of the intermediate stations if you'd like to. At Eiger Glacier Station, you'll find a couple of restaurants. There are numerous restaurants and some souvenir shops at Kleine Scheidegg. And Grindelwald, Wengen and Lauterbrunnen are all small towns with a range of shops and services. And there are some great hiking trails available too. I walked from Eiger Glacier to Kleine Scheidegg this year and absolutely loved it. The scenery was incredible. There were cows grazing on the alpine pastures, snow-capped peaks everywhere we looked. The Eiger Glacier was right there in front of us. It was just fabulous. So if you're wondering how much time you should allow for your excursion to the top of Europe, I always recommend that you spend at least 3 hours at the top, plus your travel time. The whole top of Europe complex is built on a number of different levels, and it does take some time to visit the Ice Palace, Alpine Sensation and the Sphinx Observatory. If you go outside and visit the Snow Fun Park, you'll be walking on snow, so you won't want to rush and risk falling over because it can be quite slippery and wet and slushy. And because you're at such a high altitude also, you might feel a little lethargic or lightheaded, so allow extra time for your visit. I always say try and put aside the best part of a day for your visit so that you can experience all the activities and exhibitions and enjoy a leisurely lunch without being too rushed. The excursion to the Jungfraujoch doesn't come cheap, so you want to get as much out of your visit as possible. The regular price of an adult ticket from Interlaken to Jungfraujoch is 235 Swiss franc and 80 cents during the high season, and it's slightly lower in low season. This price can be reduced if you hold a Swiss travel pass, Swiss half fare card or a regional pass Bern Oberland. And if you hold a Jungfrau travel pass, you can pay as little as 75 Swiss franc for the excursion. I'll include a list of all the prices with the various travel passes in the show notes too. Children aged from 6 years to 15 years inclusive travel for free, but they must hold the junior card, which can be purchased from any train station in Switzerland for 30 Swiss franc. Jungfraujoch top of Europe can be reached by train 365 days a year, and the Eiger Express cableway is open year-round except for 1 week in November when the annual maintenance is performed. And in 2022, the closure dates November 7 to November 11, inclusive.
Here's a fun fact for you about the Jungfraujoch. The Eiger Express is currently the most modern tri-cable gondola in the world. Together with the Grindelwald Mannlichen cable car, which shares its base at Grindelwald Terminal, they can transport up to 4,000 passengers per hour. Wow. Now that you know all about visiting Jungfraujoch, let's talk about the Schilthorn. This mountain is located above the lovely village of Mürren and the Lauterbrunnen Valley. It has a height of 2,970 metres above sea level, and it provides spectacular 360-degree views of more than 200 mountain peaks. In fact, the view is so incredible up here that it has been nicknamed the Swiss skyline, and really it'll just take your breath away. The summit is also where you'll find the Piz Gloria revolving restaurant, which featured in the 1969 James Bond movie On Her Majesty's Secret Service. And I'll tell you more about that soon. To reach the Schilthorn, you have a choice of 2 ways to get there, and both provide wonderful views. The first route starts in Steckelberg, 12 minutes by car or bus from Lauterbrunnen. And this is where you'll find the valley station of the Schilthorn Cableway. Currently, as in 2022, the Schilthorn cable car consists of 4 connecting cable cars between Steckelberg and Schilthorn, but this will change in the future with the opening of the new 20XX project, which is currently under construction. At the moment, you first take a cable car from Steckelberg to Gimmelwald and then change to another cable car up to Mürren. Then, in Mürren, you board another cable car to travel up to Berg, where you change for the final leg of the journey to Schilthorn. When changing cable cars, you're always in the same building, so the changeovers are very easy. As part of the 20XX cable car project, there will be no stop or change required in Gimmelwald, as a new direct cableway is being built from Steckelberg to Mürren. And this new part of the cableway is scheduled to open in 2023, and the whole new project is scheduled to finish in 2025. In total, the route at the moment from Steckelberg to Schilthorn currently takes 32 minutes. The cable cars depart twice per hour, and you do need to scan your ticket at the turnstile to board each cable car, so make sure you keep your ticket handy. If you're travelling from Interlaken, you can either take a train to Lauterbrunnen, and services operate every 30 minutes, and then take a bus which departs from outside the train station to Steckelberg. Travel from Interlaken to Steckelberg is 42 minutes, or if you've got your own car, of course you can drive from Interlaken to Steckelberg in around 30 minutes, and there's a large car park there at the Valley Cable Car Station. The second way you can reach Schilthorn is by taking a cable car from Lauterbrunnen to Grutschol, and then you change to a train to Mürren. Once you're in Mürren, you need to walk through the village, which is about 1 kilometre long, and that will bring you to the Schilthornbahn cable car station. Here you take a cable car to Berg and then one on to Schilthorn. Travel time for this route is 47 minutes, plus the time it takes you to walk through Mürren. There are at least half-hourly services on this route as well. To get from Interlaken to Lauterbrunnen, again, you can take a train as you would for the first option that I mentioned before, and it's a 20-minute train trip. And if you've got a car, of course you can drive. Again, it's around 20 minutes, and there's a large car park adjacent to the Lauterbrunnen train station. Once you've arrived at the summit of Schilthorn, there's lots to see and do. For me, the main attraction is without a doubt the spectacular view that you get from the observation deck. As well as the Eiger, Monk and Jungfrau, on a clear day it's possible to see Mount Titlis, the Jura Mountains, the Black Forest in Germany, and even Mont Blanc in France. So the views are just endless. You can, as far as the eye can see, there are mountains. It's just incredible. And you can also see Lakes Thun and Brienz, down below on either side of Interlaken. As I mentioned earlier, Schilthorn is where the James Bond movie On Her Majesty's Secret Service was filmed. So there are plenty of James Bond-inspired attractions here. These include Spy World, an interactive exhibition where you can, amongst other things, fly a helicopter simulator, learn some Bond trivia, and virtually ride in a bobsleigh that was used in one of the movie's famous chase scenes. There's also a cinema which shows scenes and stunts from the movie. Outside, the 007 Walk of Fame features information boards about the movie's cast and crew, so you can do your own DIY tour. And there are great views from the Walk of Fame and from the perfectly placed view lounges where you can sit for a while and just take it all in. The Schilthorn also guarantees snow 365 days a year. So if you've always wanted to touch snow, this is a great place to do so. When you're hungry, the Schilthorn offers both a takeaway shop and the 360-degree restaurant Piz Gloria. This was the world's first revolving mountain restaurant, and one rotation takes 45 minutes, which gives you plenty of time to watch the beautiful mountain scenery go by as you enjoy a delicious meal. Some of the meals, of course, are Bond-themed, and there's a Bond brunch, which is very popular. And when I was there recently, I enjoyed the 007 burger, which was very tasty as well. The restaurant is very popular, so reservations are definitely recommended. And up there's also a souvenir shop where you can buy those must-have Schilthorn mementos. On your way to or from the Schilthorn summit, it's definitely worth stopping off at the Berg Intermediate Station for a look around. Here you'll find a bistro with an outdoor terrace and two activities that are not for the faint-hearted. The Skyline Walk is an observation deck with a see-through floor which protrudes out over the vertical abyss below. Right in front of the Skyline Walk are the big three, Eiger, Monk and Jungfrau. So they provide the perfect backdrop for your photo. The Thrill Walk, meanwhile, is a 200-metre steel pathway which clings to the cliff face around the rock, and it goes underneath the observation deck and the cableway. To really get your heart pumping, there's a tightrope to walk across, a tunnel to crawl through, and a glass-bottomed floor. Now, I'll admit that I haven't been brave enough to go on the Thrill Walk yet, but my husband did, and he loved it. However, I did venture out onto the Skyline Walk and stood on that observation deck with the see-through floor because I just couldn't resist the views. And yeah, it was oh so worth it. When you're heading up or down to the Schilthorn, it's also worth spending some time looking around the village of Mürren. This is an actual village where people live. There are numerous cafes, restaurants and shops here, hotels, and you can also take a funicular to Almendhübel, which is a smaller mountain. And here there's a fantastic children's playground, a restaurant, and there's lots of walking trails around there as well. If you would like to do some hiking, two that I've really enjoyed in the area, and they're both easy, are the hikes from Mürren to Gimmelwald and Mürren to Grütschel. Both of them only take about an hour each, and they're very pleasant, fantastic views, and definitely worth considering doing those ones if you've got the time. When you're planning your visit to Schilthorn, I recommend that you allow at least 2 hours to visit the summit and Berg stations, plus your travel time. And if you plan to dine in the 360-degree restaurant, have a look around Mürren or do a hike, you'll need to allow longer, of course. Ticket prices for the Schilthorn are considerably cheaper than Jungfraujoch. The regular price from Interlaken to Schilthorn is 108 Swiss franc per adult. And discounts apply if you hold a Swiss travel pass, a Swiss half fare card, a regional pass Berner Oberland, or a Jungfrau travel pass. Children up to 16 years who have a junior card or a Swiss family card and are accompanied by a parent travel for free. And I'll list all those prices in the show notes for you too. The Schilthorn is open year-round except for 2 short maintenance periods each year, 3 weeks from mid-November and 4 days in April. And these closure dates can also be found in the show notes. And here's a fun fact for you. The James Bond toilets at Schilthorn Piz Gloria won the 2017 inaugural Toilet Tourism Awards, thanks to their Bond-themed audio and visual effects. They are definitely worth checking out. Now I'll just run through a bit of a comparison of the two different excursions. And of course, you can find all this information in the show notes as well. If you're planning to visit Jungfraujoch, there are two different methods to reach the summit. Both methods use the Jungfraujoch train for the final section of the journey, which is a train that goes through a tunnel which is more than 100 years old, and you'll end up at Europe's highest train station. There's also the option to use the Eiger Express, a brand new state-of-the-art cable car which runs between Grindelwald and Eiger Glacier. From the summit, there are magnificent glacier views of the Aletsch Glacier, and you can partake in snow activities during the summer. The travel time from Interlaken is a minimum of 90 minutes each way, and my recommendation is to allow the best part of a day for your visit. If it's Schilthorn you're planning to visit, again, there are two different ways you can reach the top. From the summit, you get 360-degree views of Alps and lakes. There's a revolving restaurant and plenty of Bond-themed exhibitions. At the Berg station, there's a thrill walk, and the travel time from Interlaken is currently around 80 minutes if you take the Steckelberg option. I recommend you allow a minimum of half a day to visit. I've covered a lot of information in this episode, and I hope it has helped you to decide whether to choose Jungfraujoch or Schilthorn for your excursion. Or perhaps you'll visit both. They are both fantastic excursions. The best one to visit depends on your interests, the time you have available, and your budget. Don't forget you can find all the information from today's episode in the show notes at holidays2switzerland.com/episode 56. Now, coincidentally, whilst I was making my notes for this episode, I received a message from Alan Ramsey, who's the market manager for the Schilthorn. And he was a guest on episode 7 of the podcast. So that one's worth going back and having a listen to as well. Alan's message said, "Hi, Carolyn. I was in the cable car heading for the Schilthorn with a group when someone from the USA asked if I was Alan. She recognized my voice from your podcast." Well, Alan still has a Scottish accent, even though he's lived in Switzerland for over 30 years. So he's probably not that hard to recognize. But still, imagine my delight that a podcast listener recognized him. That just made my day. So if you were that person that recognized Alan by his voice, I'd love to hear from you. And if any of you other lovely listeners have visited a destination, booked a hotel or tour, or bought a rail pass after listening to an episode of the podcast, I'd love to hear from you too, because knowing that I can help you to find the ideal match for your holiday is just a wonderful feeling. Feel free to send an email to hello@holidays2switzerland.com or send me a DM on Instagram at holidays2Switzerland. That's all for this episode. Thank you so much again for listening, and I look forward to chatting to you next time when we're going to be talking all about the beautiful city of Lucerne. Tschüss!
If you'd like more great resources to help you plan your dream trip to Switzerland, there are lots of ways to connect with us. Visit our website holidays2switzerland.com, sign up for our monthly newsletter, or join our friendly, helpful community of past and future travellers in our Switzerland travel planning group. You'll also find the links to connect with us in the show notes for this episode. Show notes and a list of all previous episodes are available at holidays2switzerland.com/podcast. Don't miss out on your fortnightly dose of Swiss travel inspo. Hit the subscribe button on your favourite podcast app so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating. That's all for this edition of the Holidays to Switzerland Travel Podcast. Thanks for joining us and happy travel planning.